Angela Gismondi from the Daily Commercial News. I'm here today with Rob Trymbulak, who is an iron worker, supervisor on the Gordie Howe Bridge project. He was an addict for 25 years and he graduated from the Novo Treatment Centre March 2016. He's been clean for 5 years now. Rob, just here today, welcome, first of all. And we're just here today to talk about you and your story. So if you can tell me a little bit about your substance abuse and your addiction, and when and how did it all begin?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the opportunity. I found over the years it's important to share my story, to get it out to others, especially for the format, for the construction industry. I don't get to do it on that format very often. Actually, this is probably the first time formally. So it's interesting that this question in the past should probably be the easiest one for me to answer, but it isn't. It takes some effort for me to answer this question, but how I would say it is like my addiction started at a very young age, before even the substance abuse, probably before I was even a teenager. Again, this is in the context of me knowing this now that I've been to the Novo Treatment Centre and I've been living clean. I didn't know it at the time. And my substance abuse probably started about 13 years old, just with some smoking cigarettes, some drinking, maybe some by 15 and 16, it was becoming more of a daily occurrence, right? Before that, I was just experimenting. I think it was all experimenting, to tell you the truth, in the beginning. At least that's what I thought it was. But I find it probably really beneficial, and it's probably the only thing I really read today, but it's such it just really helps. It hits home with me, and like the definition of addiction, according to Gabor Mate, who's like an addiction specialist, a Canadian doctor. It's a compulsive physical and psychological dependence on habit-forming substances, mind-altering substances, drug or alcohol. It can also be activities such as gambling, video games, shopping, eating, sports, working, etc., substances or activities in spite of negative consequences. We can't seem to stop. That's pretty much the definition of the disease of addiction, the way I understand it. My experience has shown me that when I'm acting out in my addiction, I am self-centered, self-absorbed, and blinded to or in denial about the fact that I'm even acting that way. My addiction is very efficient, or addiction in general is very efficient at disguising itself. For me, I become defensive. I begin to justify or blame others or circumstances for my behavior. And that was pretty much the story of my entire life, you know, and it kind of progressed. The longer I use, the drugs and the alcohol progressed as well, and the drugs that I use progressed over time. Seems to be every decade I tried something different. And you know, the biggest thing for me, which blows my mind, is how blinded I was to it.
You were working on the Gordie Howe Bridge project in Windsor, Ontario. You've been in construction for pretty much your entire career. What impact has that had on your addiction and your substance abuse, you know, over the years?
Pretty much made it easier for me to make excuses for my addiction. It was easy to find people who had some money, who had, you know, maybe owned homes, cars, had families like me. And it just seemed like we were doing what everyone else was doing. Meanwhile, there were times I lost jobs, but we just call it, you get laid off. Not too often you just get fired. You know, you don't show up for 3 days because you're out acting out on in a party scene or addiction, and they lay you off. And especially in the first 10, 15 years of my career, there was so much work here in Windsor, and all you did was go call another contracting company and start a new job. So, you know, it's not like I was homeless on the streets. Like, I didn't even know what addiction was really my entire life up until I ended up in the Novo Treatment Centre. But so it kind of, it fueled my addiction in a way. And it made it even more easy to make excuses. Not that things weren't piling up and circumstances weren't, you know, progressing, negative consequences, like it says, were happening, but I could always come up with excuses. Like I said, just go get another job. And even in all of that, sometimes you'll find some people that are pretty high up the food chain that they'll get you jobs. I've been a supervisor early in my career because of my addiction, probably because of the way I liked, because of my lifestyle, which was like an everyday party at work, after work. There's people out there like that. Um, and it wasn't until it got so overwhelming that I could see it, where I was unemployable.
Can you tell me, when you realized you needed treatment and when you actually, went and got it?
So basically, the drug choices I've had have escalated so much. Been hiding it so much. The excuses all ran out. Basically, my wife was no longer putting up with it. Um, it was I lost a key supervisor role that I had for years. I was installing windmills all up through Ontario. I missed a couple days due to substance abuse and addiction. Um, Even then, I wanted to try and fix it myself, which is another big characteristic of addiction. Um, but really, so at the end of the day, I was kicked out of my house, um, living in hotel rooms, no longer had a job, and it was my wife and a couple good friends and my business agent from my union who got me to go into a detox center where I was only there a few hours, but because I registered there, um, became a public affirmation that I had a problem. And my BA called me there and told me that I was no longer employable. I would have to go to this treatment center called Novo if I wanted to go back to work. So I was out of money, had no place to live. Um, I only hung around with people that used the drugs I was using. So it had to get really, really bad for me.
And then what kind of things did you learn there? What did you come away with?
The first thing I had to do was stop using for a few days, which was something I never did. So that's the first thing I learned. Like I can string 10 or 12 days together without using a substance to get through the day. So that's the very first thing that happened. But what also happened was, so this might sound naive, but I didn't know what the 12 steps were. I didn't really think I was an addict. So I started to learn about values and morals that I've lost along the way. They can be summed up as principles in the treatment center, or the 12-step programs are called spiritual principles. So I started to learn the power of getting honest, telling someone, asking for help. There's some definite relief and power behind that. I started to, because what my mind told me all these years was, if I told people what I was really doing, they would reject me, abandon me, leave me, and I would be all alone. So for me to be able to share that stuff, and the counselors there were just so compassionate. There was zero judgment. And then the other people that were there, like me, they might be there in their second or third or fourth week. So uh, they've got this huge positive attitude, and they're the same way. So sharing amongst my peers with people that were screwing their lives up like I was, had such a healing power behind it. I couldn't even believe it. It blew my mind.